Hey everyone, welcome to another crypto market update. We're going to kind of not do really anything involving fundamentals on-chain analysis. We're really just going to dive into the price action of BTC as well as an inverse chart of Bitcoin, and then finally looking at a few of the alts here. So first things first, we got the 5-minute chart, but let's first look at the large time frames to obviously get a good understanding of where we are. We already made a video talking about this potential head and shoulders pattern at the top of this symmetrical triangle near this key level of resistance around 98.10K. And then the right shoulder would be ideally sitting around $9,200, somewhere around there. It could even go up to $9,450, somewhere around there, and I'd still be comfortable with a possible short for this move to the downside. But that's on the large time frames. Let's get into the smaller time frames here. First, looking at this 4-hour chart, I did draw in this potential bear flag. Let's just take a smaller time frame on the 1 hour and just understand what we could potentially see here. So first things, we drew a trend line connecting the low, higher low, higher low, and then we got a lot of volatility within this zone, as we can see. Let's just take a quick picture and then discuss it a little bit more clear. This is that price action pattern that we're talking about, and we see that there's a lot of volatility here, a lot of indecision in the market, both by the buyers and sellers, and we'll look at this smaller price action within the 15-minute, 5-minute, but just going to break down the price of Bitcoin in some smaller time frames here. But first things first, we could still see this $9,200 zone get hit. I still think that it could come to fruition, so that would mean that we would have to adjust this support a little bit, so then it'd be a little bit more like a projection, but I don't mind at all. And I think this next chart shows it a little bit more clear. So let's zoom out and maybe go to the 1 hour. I think that's a better understanding of what we currently see within the market. All right, there we go. All right, so what do we currently see? I personally am looking for a possible nice bearish price action pattern, which is an ascending wedge. We see our resistance and our support right here, and we're currently right at the support, and we are currently in a descending wedge as well. We can see that right there with a little bit of a support, creating a very, very close squeeze in the price, and it's just a matter of if we're going to actually break to the downside, breaking this larger ascending wedge or bearish flag pattern, or we're going to come back up and potentially test this resistance here for the 4th time, which would be a nice confluence zone at around 9,200, like we talked about looking at the smaller time frames. So right now it's just an analysis of are we going to be breaking to the downside here, and that is going to be that rejection, or could we see another rejection, maybe not even to the 9,200, but continuing this wedge along in the consolidation, getting tighter and tighter, squeezing the volatility until there's going to be an expansion phase, and that's what we're looking to do. So right now we're looking to see if we are already in the expansion phase within the smaller time frames, because obviously we just had the halving. Not a lot of movement within the price. It's basically going sideways. We are seeing slightly higher lows and higher highs, hence we drew in our price action pattern, but I don't really see any real A-plus setups that we currently see in the market. So let's drop it down some time frames from the hour chart to the 15-minute chart, and we'll be able to see this price action pattern a little bit more clear in terms of the smaller time frames. So let's go back and take another snip with the 15-minute chart. So we got our first rejection, second rejection, third rejection. So we know that there's sell pressure within this zone, and then we have our anchor, we have our first touch, second touch, and then we see a lot of volatility within this zone. So I do think that we're going to have a pretty big push either to the downside or to the upside. I don't exactly know yet. The price action pattern is giving a little bit more of an indication that we could start to see a potential move back up to the highs here, testing 9K or 92, somewhere around there. to connect that for the fourth high, the higher high within this price action pattern. But we will look on the smaller time frames to see what we can find for this wedge. We can see a resistance right here. It did break, and now we're testing for a new level of support. We'll see how that goes. We got a little midpoint zone right here, and then we have a little support zone right here as well, which we'll look at within the smaller time frames, which is holding the price on the larger time frames within this larger structure that we have. But if it fails, that means that we could get a spill to the downside. We do have quite a bit of support at around the 8K range. If we zoom back out to, let's say, the 6 hour, we have two key trend lines here. We have the first trend line, which is the previous resistance turning into a new support. And then we have the bottom trend line, which was a previous support, which is now going to act yet again as a support zone. So we do have a decent amount of support or demand potentially here. But I think if we do push down, it will be pretty severe. Something to note is all the wicks that are to the downside here, showing that the sellers are trying to push the price down, but the buyers are saying no. I am gonna buy the dip basically and not let it go beyond, let's say, 84.50, 84.40. So we're seeing a lot of wick action to the downside, indicating that buyers are not giving up yet, and they are still able to hold this support pretty well right here. So we got a huge bearish engulfing candle within that middle of the zone with a lot of sell pressure coming in, much greater than any of the buy pressure on the upside. So there definitely is indications that sellers are in control, but we are still seeing wicks to the downside, and we're seeing a squeeze here that could get a little bit more of a push back to the upside to test the higher high before we potentially create the right shoulder, and then we move to the downside if there is going to be a bearish move, because with the miners squeezing, with the difficulty not adjusting, there hasn't really been any sign of easing for the inefficient miners, basically, where the difficulty is getting greater and greater because the hash rate is significantly increasing as time goes on, as more people start to mine, and there has to be a time where a culling of inefficient miners has to take place, and that is what we're going to be trading here for a swing trade. And then after that point, I think we're going to have some consolidation. Hopefully we create some level of a base, which is a little bit better than what we've seen within the price action recently, in my personal view, but we will see. Time will tell. So let's just bring it back over and just understand that we have a decent amount of support there, but I think if it does move to the downside, it's really going to move to the downside, because we got a decent amount of space here to go in terms of major zones of support and resistance. Like I said before, the 77, 76-ish $100 zone is a key area that we need to pass, because that's the midway point for our major macro triangle pattern, the symmetrical triangle that we have taken place. So that's going to be the first major level of demand. If it does go below this zone, we got around 6K to 67, let's say, is a decent amount of space, but I do think that 6K could get touched. If we look at the weekly chart here, we got a key level of ascending level of support connecting the higher lows, and if we do see a move to the downside, we could get a wick touch around this zone. We don't need an entire candle closure at that zone. We are using OCO orders, which are a type of order which allows you to take profit while being able to limit your risk by having a stop loss. Both long and short, it's a great opportunity to gain exposure in the market while not needing to be in front of the charts for 14 hours a day or whatever you are doing. So now that we've gone over the larger time frames, we are looking for short-term bearish, but long-term, if we're talking this year, 2020, we are extremely bullish for BTC. But in terms of what could come down in, let's say, this month, I do think that we're more bearish bias than bullish bias. So now that we've gone over the larger time frames, let's now jump into the 15-minute, because we already went over the 1 hour time frame. And it does look like we are getting a little bit of a move, which could push the price back up to 91, 9200, which would be really, really solid. So now that we've gone over the 15-minute chart, let's go over the 5-minute chart to really get a good understanding here. We already know that this is a large bearish flag, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to get another touch of the series of higher highs. This is a continuation pattern. Hopefully, if it does play out, meaning that we are inevitably looking for a move to the downside. But if we are on the 15 or 5, that doesn't mean that we can't get a nice entry for a trade to get the bullish push. 5% to the upside. If you're risking 1.5% or 2%, that's a pretty good risk-reward situation that you could be looking for yourself. If you want to be a little bit more conservative with your risk and have a higher risk reward, obviously that's great too, but it does look like we are gaining some decent buy volume. So let's take a step back here and quickly talk about what we could see within the market. So on the really small time frame, we know that there is buyers within this zone. Yes, on the 5 minute, we did break and hold below this area, but on the 1 hour, we just see wicks. So we know that there was buyers to bring the price back here, bring the price back here, and we see it hold here. So you see a squeeze where you see a low set in, which is a little bit worrying for anyone who is trading this pattern, but you get the bulls to bring the price right back up, and there's a lot of volatility within this zone as we can see, but the volatility is contained and it's funneling into an apex, and we can see that we did get a little support resistance right here, and then these are the two key zones that I'm using, 1, 2, and then we got 1, 2, 3, so we got 5 zones here if you include this little support resistance here that is validating this to be a key level of resistance. That's going to be pushing sell pressure into the market. We have a midpoint, which is a dotted line, which is going to be right here, both as a support and a resistance, kind of the midway point for the price action pattern, and then we got a major level of demand or support right here, and also we see a low. Yes, we did see a lower low, which got brought right back up, but what I was really interested in is the hold from all the way throughout this price action pattern here. So let's zoom in into the actual squeeze that we can currently see on the 5 minute chart for BTC. So this was actually moved down here, but with the different time frames that we're moving in and out of, I guess it seemingly did pop off. Sometimes does happen when you're going into the really small time frames. But we can see right here initial resistance turning into support and then dumping back down, some level of significance. We have key rejection 1, key rejection 2, and then we have 1, 2, 3, and then now it tested for a nice new level of support. So previous levels of resistance, key level of support, which is good to see, and that is in confluence with our ascending level of support connecting the higher lows. So we see a low right here. Yes, we did breach this zone, but we came right back up, and then we see this zone get tested once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, many times, 6, 7 times. So a lot of times where we're seeing the price respect this area. So I'm viewing this as a squeeze. At the end of the day, this is a tiny squeeze in the larger price action pattern of the bearish flag or bearish wedge or whatever you want to call it, an ascending channel, ascending wedge. But my viewpoint is we could see a little bit of more of a bullish push here to get that next higher high, or at least test this high of around 89 to 9K. That would be pretty good, and then we might see it fail, but we don't exactly know. That's pretty much my viewpoint of the market. I think we had an absolute huge move on the larger time frames since that massive push to the downside, and I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit of a reversal here because of the fundamentals like we talked about time and time again. But we're not extremely bearish long term. Yes, I do think that we're going to get a fall down, but we're going to be using OCO orders. We're not going to be looking for massive extensions to the downside. I think this will be potentially, let's say, average ish percent down move, and I don't think we're really going to surpass 6K. So that's kind of going to be the end goal for me for any shorts playing this potential move to the downside. On the larger time frames, on the smaller time frames, it does look more bullish in my personal view. But on the large time frames, I'm definitely more bullish. See a little bit of disruption in the YouTube live. Don't exactly know why. I'm going to check the OBS really quickly. But I don't really see anything wrong with the OBS. I don't exactly know. I'll check in a little bit. But that's going to be my analysis for the crypto markets, mainly for BTC, because Bitcoin is significantly higher market cap than every other coin compared to it. Ethereum, Ripple, you name it. Bitcoin has significant dominance. So let's quickly glance over at some alts here. First, looking at Ethereum, we do have a nice little squeeze here where we're seeing a series of higher lows and lower highs squeezing into the apex of the symmetrical triangle, which is good to see. Good price action pattern here. If we do get a break to the upside, I don't expect it to be crazy high. Obviously, Bitcoin will play a major role in the decision for the alts not just Ethereum, but for all alts. But we do see a nice little squeeze here for Ethereum, so we'll check an eye out and see what it will do. If Bitcoin does move to the upside, probably Ethereum will break out of this squeeze to the upside. We got a key level of resistance at around $198 to $200. That's a major level for Ethereum, and if we do get the price to enter in that zone, I would be looking for some reversal pattern. We don't exactly know, but we have seen in the past that this is a major key level for the price. All right, XRP is just in consolidation. I don't really see anything that I want to trade within this price action pattern because I just see a resistance at around 20 cents and we see a support quite large, actually sitting at, let's say, 18 to 18.7, around there, and I don't really see anything just yet to trade. We could say that we have a descending zone, as we can see right here, but not really anything that I want to really say that is a pattern on this chart, just because nothing's emerged yet that has given me enough dependability for a price action pattern. I think Bitcoin has shown to be the most valid pattern out of the alts and BTC in my personal view. So not going to talk a whole lot about on XRP, but I know that this 1825, 1850-ish range is a significant zone that I do think, if we do break, could be a pretty key area. And why do I think that? If we look back in the previous time frames, it was the previous lower low in December of 2019 before we made that huge move to the upside. And then just looking at the larger time frames here, let's zoom all the way back to the 12-hour. We are making on the larger time frames lower lows. So this potential head and shoulders, if we do actually test the 20-cent range yet again, would be a nice head and shoulders, and the breakout point would be 1850. And then the lower low, if you are really expecting XRP to plummet, would be like 10 cents ish, and you could get a little bit of an overperformance, but that would be just continuing the trend of this lower low expanding pattern that XRP has been basically partaking in for a very long time, since 2019 basically. I'm just going to put this zone in there as well because I do think it's a pretty important area to outline, but yeah, I'm going to be looking at that. So I do think that we could see another low here. That head and shoulders, if you don't see it, if we're looking on the large time frames, let's just take a smaller time frame. And I actually saw a similar price action pattern right here as well with the head and shoulders. So let's get our snip. So what do we see right here? We saw a left shoulder right here, left shoulder, and then this is the right shoulder. Right shoulder, you could say that that is the right shoulder as well, and obviously this is going to be the head. Right here we have the left shoulder, we have the head, and then we could get a little consolidation here forming the right shoulder. This descending trend line could play a role in this breakout, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got something like that, similar to what we saw in the previous price action pattern. So that's going to be my reversal pattern for XRP. I think that could inevitably play out. I'm going to be really patient, stick with my overall plan, but it's definitely too early in my personal belief to really call anything. BNB is going to be the next thing that we're going to be looking at. I do see a descending wedge where we're seeing a series of lower lows and lower highs. Not really valid, not really dependable. I'm just drawing it in and seeing if it will actually go with the actual price action pattern that I have drawn in. I do think that there are some better opportunities out there in the market that we could be looking at other than BNB for shorts. But if we do get a move to the upside, the key level that we'd be looking at is around $16.50-ish, maybe $16.35, $16.40 would be your zone of resistance that we'd be looking for, somewhere around right there. Could be a key zone that we could see, but at the end of the day, that would be a potential head and shoulders, like a lot of other charts that we can see, like so. You got your right shoulder, you got your head. If it does make a bullish move for retesting the previous support, new level of resistance, like we saw as a resistance back in April of 2019, would be a nice head and shoulders. So I'm going to delete those off the charts because we don't really need to see them, but that could be the potential of this price action pattern. But it's still too early to see. I think if Bitcoin does move to the upside, some of these alts could gain a little bit more buy pressure to get that leg up to the retest zone, which would be not a bad situation to be in. Last thing we're going to be looking at is Link. Link's $3.50 range is, in my opinion, a potential cliff that we could be falling off of. We see this double top initially, and this $3.50 break was the capitulation before it absolutely plummeted. And we see that this $3.50 range has been a key zone of significance from, let's say, mid-April onwards, where it's been holding as a key level of support. We did get a little bit of diamond hit shape here, where we saw higher highs and then lower highs. And then once you saw that squeeze come to an end where the price broke above the key level of resistance, you did get a move to the upside, which did not occur on basically the rest of the alts that I was looking at. I was looking at XRP, BNB, Ethereum, and Link. This move only occurred on Link. And you can see the relationship between Link and BTC actually kind of indicate that. I didn't catch this move, I can't say I did, but it is pretty interesting to see that Link has decently more buy volume than a lot of these other alts that we're looking at. It isn't as correlated as some of these different alts. So now looking at the smaller time frames here on the 1 hour chart, we still are holding at $3.50 range, but we are holding also below this key zone as well. So let's just get our snip there, or our different size of the line. So this also potentially looks like a head and shoulders, if you might not be able to see. Let's get our snip here. And then we initially have this zone as a resistance. We see multiple rejections from this zone, and then we test as a support, which is nice. And this is our left shoulder. We can see that right here. This is our head, and this is our right shoulder. So what's the breakout zone? This descending zone, which is our previous level of resistance, is now going to be our key level of support. So it did actually break this zone, and now we're consolidating below this area. So if Bitcoin actually does inevitably go down, this could be an actual pattern that we could play out as, because this is a key level of support, and this is a major level of resistance. And you could say that this is a head and shoulders, and then you get a squeeze of this resistance with the price action pattern giving us validity to move to the downside. And once you see that support actually break, you have a high probability chance that it is going to absolutely dump to the downside, as long as Bitcoin is kind of doing the same thing. If Bitcoin's obviously moving to the upside, Bitcoin is going to be a major key player in any alt's price action. Bitcoin moves all alts in the market, so you do have to really pay attention to what BTC is doing. But for now, let's just zoom in the smaller time frame here. We made a strong move up. We made a higher high. It looks like we are holding a higher low. This major ascending zone right here, let's just bring that to the back, and then get this trend line and make that a little bit longer and a little bit wider so we can see it. That trend line right there is going to be that main zone we've been holding quite a while, and we broke this descending zone, which has been the squeeze of this descending wedge, which is pretty bullish. So in the short term, I think we could get another move up to test around 9K. Would be really good for that head and shoulders that we have been playing out for the larger time frames, talking about the 4, 6, 8 hour, daily, whatever you want to go with. So the hours definitely looking more bearish, but in terms of the smaller time frames, 5 minute, 15 minute, even hour chart, I think we could get a little bit more of a bullish push to continue the consolidation sideways, which would then be a little bit more of a push to around 9K. So that's going to be my analysis. If it does actually start to go back down and break this ascending support that we've been talking about, then this price action pattern would be valid for a next move down. We would be looking for a break, looking at the larger time frames. We'd be looking at potentially the 1 hour, seeing if we actually do close below the zone. Right now, we haven't closed below the zone yet. We have only seen wicks go below this area, but we've seen the candle closures hold this zone so far, and we're really holding this zone here. It does look like we are basing, which could be in a little bit move of them up here, but we are still in that squeeze. I'd like to see that strong initial momentum move to the upside with decent amount of buy volume. We haven't really seen that much buy volume within the start of the squeeze, but in terms of the actual volatility area, we've seen a decent amount of buy volume pick up the price and hold it above our key level. So far, it's not looking too bad. I think we could get a little bit more of a bullish push, but at the end of the day, that sell pressure from the mining basically culling of the inefficient miners, in my opinion, will create a dump that would be a final shakeout for basically the weak hands that got in from this push up before the halving, and then after that it would just be basically waiting until this large symmetrical triangle on the weekly chart is going to break. And when that breaks, I'm going to be extremely bullish. I'm going to be looking for huge opportunities within the market. But before then, I'm going to be less risk on and a little bit more skeptical of a massive rally. This did take me as a little bit of a surprise. Definitely buy the rumor, sell the news was very present and prevalent in the market this time around for sure. So definitely good things to note. They only happen every 4 years. So if you learn something in this market, make sure that it actually sticks enough that you're actually going to implement it in the next time round. So that's going to be my analysis for BTC and a lot of these alts here. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Not much more to talk about. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below, and I will be looking for any questions within TikTok or YouTube lives. But until next time, have a good one, everyone.